Movie begins with Ben going to his factory boss again to ask for his old job. He had been fired earlier and was pleading repeatedly because his daughter was sick and he urgently needed money. But the boss refused because Ben had an anger problem and that temper had gotten him thrown out of every job he had ever had. In fact, he was now banned. Ben lost his temper and left. Outside, he noticed that the whole world was obsessed with a game show called Running Man. If someone survived for 30 days, they could win $1 million. All they had to do was escape from the hunters roaming everywhere. Ben began considering entering the game. When he reached home, we see that the government provided everyone with a free VTV that only broadcast deadly games like this. In one of the broadcasts, we also saw the newly printed currency notes featuring Arnold's picture from the 1987 Running Man movie inside the show. A contestant was answering quiz questions. He kept getting them right, but after one wrong answer, he was dropped from a height and killed. Soon after, Sheila, Ben's wife, arrived. Both of them were extremely stressed because their daughter Kathy had a fever and Ben still hadn't found work. Sheila worked at a bar where drunk men constantly caused trouble. Ben told her he was rejected again. She said he should stay home and look after Kathy while she worked extra hours at the bar to earn more money, but Ben didn't want her working in such a place. Sheila admitted she didn't like it either, but had no choice. Ben then watched the Running Man game on TV and said he would bring money home no matter what. But Sheila understood what he meant and reminded him that no contestant had ever returned alive from that game. Ben said even if he survived a single day, they would start receiving good money, enough to save their daughter. He had already decided to go. Sheila begged him to return alive somehow. Ben agreed and left. Next, we get a look at this cruel future world where the poor live in miserable conditions. Ben stood in a long queue to enter the game. A sick old man collapsed and Ben tried helping him, asking the guards to call a doctor. They refused. Ben got angry and the guards punished him by dragging him to the back of the line. Finally, Ben reached the front. After waiting for a long time, he entered the audition area and met a girl named Jenny who lived in his neighborhood. In the elevator, another guy named Tim joined them. He was very excited to play the game, and the three became friends. Auditions began. The participants went through several physical tests, and Ben passed easily because he was physically strong. Then came a mental test with many questions. Even though he was irritated, he still passed. His anger issues even impressed the presenters. In the end, Ben, Tim, and Jenny all made it to the final round. As they moved ahead, they saw the leader of the hunters, the person responsible for tracking and killing the running men. Next, they were taken to Dan, the producer of the show. Before the game began, they had to sign a contract. They were even offered a woman for a night of fun. When Ben met Dan, nicknamed Thanos Brother, he called the game a death game, which impressed Dan. Dan gave him a $1,000 signing bonus and told him that even surviving for a week would earn him a lot of money. He added that most people in the world didn't even make that much anymore. Dan said Ben seemed like the strongest player and someone with his level of anger was perfect because the show's TRP was falling. He also said that his wife would receive weekly payments. Ben signed the contract. When they brought a woman to him, Ben said he loved his wife. Dan apologized and Ben left with a guard. The guard told Ben that his family would be relocated because the entire world would be hunting him now. The danger could reach his family, so they would be given a new identity and Ben wouldn't be allowed to speak to his wife anymore. Ben requested one last call. The guard directed him to Sheila, and Ben told her to take care because he would be in the Running Man game for the next 30 days. Sheila was heartbroken. The next day, Sheila sent Ben their family photo and Kathy's socks so he wouldn't forget them. Ben was given a wristband showing time and money. Then he walked forward with Dan. They saw the game's presenter, Bobby. Bobby said that America was the greatest country in the world, and its people lived peacefully through hard work. But some people tried breaking into their homes and the police would catch them. Criminals like these were put into the Running Man game and released among the public. Whoever caught them received a reward, and then the hunters killed them. That was the concept of the Running Man game. After explaining the rules, Bobby danced forward and presented Ben Richards. He claimed Ben worked for Defense Net Security, but was caught selling top secret national information. They even showed a deep fake video of Ben. Ben shouted that it was all lies. Bobby told the public to remember his face and announced that anyone who provided information about him would receive $10,000 and a date with his wife, who entertained men at the army camp. Ben was furious hearing this. Then Bobby stepped aside and told Ben to say his final words before entering the game. After that, Ben says, "I'm off then," which everyone starts repeating as a joke, because at this point, almost the whole world hates him. Once that's done, all participants are briefed on the rules. The moment they step into the city, they must start running. The farther they manage to go, the more money they accumulate. Their trackers won't work during the game, which means no one can trace their exact location. They are also handed a box containing a small device. Every single day, they must record a video of themselves and drop the device into any mailbox anywhere in the world. Missing even one day will get them instantly disqualified. Another rule states that the longer they manage to stay alive, the closer they get to earning the full $1 million prize. Next, we see Ben along with Jenny and Tim. The hunters, whose only job is to track and kill the contestants, are introduced as well, with their leader being the most lethal among them. The three contestants are placed on top of a huge metal container, and then each of them slides down a different chute, sending them into different parts of the city. Ben lands outside a building where he discovers clean clothes and supplies waiting for him. He picks them up and hops into a taxi. The driver recognizes him instantly but decides not to report him, saying he doesn't support killing people for entertainment. Because of that, Ben manages to get away safely. Ben then reaches an abandoned building. He heads down to the basement where he finds a man named Molly, someone who used to create illegal items. Molly is an old friend of Ben's. He panics upon seeing him, since helping a Running Man contestant could put him in serious danger. Ben pleads for his help to escape. Eventually, Molly agrees and says he will create a fake passport for Ben. If Ben can hide in another country for 30 days, he might actually survive. Ben agrees. Molly gives him a makeover, takes new photos, and prepares the fake passport, all for the sake of Sheila and Kathy. Ben says goodbye and leaves. He arrives at the airport extremely nervous. He submits his documents and his ticket to New York gets approved. Once there, Ben checks into a hotel. To mislead the hunters, he pretends to walk into a different hotel room while recording his video. He drops the device into a mailbox and then returns to his real room, hiding out and watching TV shows while planning his next steps. Meanwhile, the hunters capture Molly. They torture him mercilessly. Eventually, Molly breaks under the pain and reveals information. Ben senses this through a nightmare where he sees himself being killed in New York. The dream shakes him badly. Ben turns the game show back on. At that moment, the hunters find Tim casually shopping with a cap on his head. They kill him instantly. Ben is upset and realizes he cannot remain in the place Molly recommended because Molly, under torture, might expose everything. So Ben leaves and moves to Boston. He rents a filthy, run-down hotel room where no one would think to look for him. Inside, he finds a junkie stash full of drugs and even a grenade. Then he starts using the drugs, sits by the window, and mocks random people passing by. That's how his second day passes. Then, while heading to the public washroom, he hears sounds outside. The hunters have found him. He hides as they move toward his room. Ben sneaks into the bathroom. With no escape route available, he smashes a piece of glass to create a makeshift spear. He climbs onto the terrace and lowers himself by a rope toward his room's window. He wraps a towel around his hand, breaks the window, and climbs inside. The noise alerts the hunters. Ben quickly stuffs all his things into a bag. A TV announcement states that guards have located his room. Gunshots fire. Ben climbs back down using the rope and crashes into another man's room. A drone spots him and tries to start recording, but Ben grabs it and shuts it off. He runs toward the faulty elevator. The hunters catch up to him. Ben throws the grenade into the elevator. The hunter's leader hurls it onto the elevator roof right before it explodes. The blast sends Ben plummeting into the basement storage area. Guards fire from outside and toxic gas begins to seep into the basement. Rats escape through a tunnel. Ben follows them. A massive explosion goes off, killing the hunters and blowing apart the hotel. Ben resurfaces through sewer water. He records his next video message saying, "BKL, I'm still alive." Then he crawls out of a drainage pipe. A young boy spots him. Ben assumes the boy will report him to the officials, but the boy says he wants to help and runs to get his brother Brad. Brad turns out to be a rebel who opposes the government. He wants to assist Ben. He hands the daily video device to his younger brother Matt, instructing him to drop it in a mailbox. Matt leaves with it. Brad takes Ben back home. At Brad's house, we meet his mother, his younger brother Matt, and a small child battling cancer. The family has been trying to arrange treatment. Brad praises Ben because the game officials still haven't been able to trace him. Ben shares his own family struggles with them. Brad shows him his online vlog channel where he analyzes the Running Man game and past contestants. He explains that most players get caught because they walk around in public like normal people. Only the clever ones stay completely hidden, making them almost impossible to capture. Brad believes Ben might be the first contestant who could actually win. Until now, the longest any player has survived is 29 days. We'll learn about that survivor later. Ben continues living with Brad's family. One day, Brad explains how the government runs these deadly games solely to torture the poor. He believes the children's illnesses are also linked to the government's actions. In Ben's next daily video, he says that the government doesn't care about children and that the game officials work hand in hand with them. He claims they force poor people into deadly entertainment shows and urges the public to stop watching such violent content. That night, Bobby airs Ben's BKL I'm Still Alive video. Brad's entire family watches. But then Bobby shows the hunters killed in the hotel explosion and broadcasts footage of their crying children. In a third fake video, they use deepfake technology to make Ben insult the hunters' kids, mocking them and calling them orphans. Watching this, Brad's mother becomes furious. She says Ben cannot stay in their house anymore. The entire family turns against him. Brad chooses to drive Ben out of the city. Suddenly, hunters ambush their vehicle. Ben sees two of them chasing. He throws a wrench, knocking one down. Brad stops the car and knocks down the second. They escape safely. Brad gives Ben the address of his close friend Elton, who lives in a town called Derry. He also hands Ben a gun to protect him. Ben feels relieved and thankful. Ben moves to the other side of the street and sits with a group of homeless people watching the broadcast of the Running Man. That's when he sees that the hunters have cornered Jenny inside a casino. Jenny is desperately trying to film her daily video while running for her life. Two teenage boys catch her, set her on fire, and proudly collect their reward. Now Ben is officially the last player left in the game. The sight crushes him. After that, Ben travels to meet Elton, who lives in a secluded house far from the city. Elton's mother is glued to the TV, watching the game and cursing Ben every few minutes. Elton tells him not to take her seriously. He then reveals that his family has been fighting against the corrupt government for years. His father had been a police officer who was executed for speaking out against the game. Elton wants the world to see the truth. If Ben survived and won, he could help expose the entire system. That was why Elton agreed to help. Elton's father had built a secret bunker miles outside the city where Ben could safely hide for the remaining days. Ben loved the idea. That night, Ben recorded another message saying that the government was destroying its own people by calling these deadly games free entertainment. He urged people not to fall for it. When he stepped outside afterward, Elton's mother suddenly grabbed him and pressed the emergency button to alert the hunters. Elton yelled at Ben to run. Ben grabbed his backpack, but the hunters were already there. The hunters stormed the house only to discover that Elton had prepared traps in almost every room. One by one, he took them down using those booby traps. After disabling nearly 7 or 8 hunters, Elton came downstairs to get Ben. But one hunter managed to stab Elton and was seconds away from killing Ben. Elton quickly stabbed him back, and Ben finished the job. The hunters then forced Ben to speak with Dan, the showrunner. Dan bragged that Ben's presence was sending the show's TRP soaring. Ben shouted that real people were dying and accused Dan of turning everything into a sick spectacle. Dan casually told him that fake shows don't look convincing, and that's why real deaths were required. Dan even ordered Ben to kill the wounded hunter in front of him to boost ratings. Instead, Ben smashed the drone recording him. Ben and Elton escaped in a car. Elton handed Ben a map leading to the bunker, but before they could get far, a sniper fired. Elton was shot dead by the lead hunter. Ben triggered the explosives Elton had prepared and jumped into the water, escaping the ambush. Then he reached the location of the bunker, only to discover that the government had built a brand new city over it. The bunker had been destroyed long ago. Exhausted and heartbroken, Ben hid in the area. Eventually, he decided to give the audience the show they seemed hungry for. Drones were closing in. Ben hijacked a woman's car named Amelia and drove off with her. The drones filmed everything. Amelia thought Ben was a maniac, exactly like the game portrayed him. Ben tried to explain that the show twisted the truth about him. He opened up about his family, but before they could talk further, a group of criminals blocked the road, planning to capture Ben for the reward money. Because that would ruin the TRP, the drones killed them instead, and even blew up their truck. Ben finally understood how the show manipulated everything. He handed Amelia a gun and begged her to trust him. A moment later, the drones announced that Ben had kidnapped Amelia. Ben told her that, like it or not, she was now part of the game. They wouldn't kill either of them yet. Amelia stepped out and tried to explain to the drones that she wasn't a hostage, but the show replaced her statement with a deep fake, showing her crying and begging for help. A whole troop of hunters appeared ahead. Ben realized they wouldn't kill him yet. He was too valuable for ratings. By now, he had survived for several days and become a fan favorite. Eventually, Ben confronted the hunter's leader, claiming that he had strapped a massive bomb to his body, and if they came any closer, everything would explode. If they wanted to avoid that, he demanded a plane to Canada for himself and Amelia. Dan agreed, and Amelia finally saw that Ben wasn't the monster they showed on TV. They boarded the plane. Ben forced the leader to remove his mask, or he would detonate the bomb. The leader complied, and Ben was shocked to see it was Eric, the contestant who survived 29 days in season 1 and later turned into a hunter. Inside the plane, Ben realized the pilots were actually hunters, but he also knew Dan wouldn't kill him yet. The plane took off. Eric told him to enjoy the flight because his life was about to change. Dan started talking to Ben. Ben was furious that Dan had placed hunters as pilots. He threatened to blow everything up again. Dan calmly replied that they had already scanned him when he boarded and that he had no bomb at all. Eric held Ben at gunpoint, but Dan ordered the other hunters to restrain him and they removed Eric's weapon. Dan laughed and told Ben that he had taken the show to new heights. Dan made Ben an offer to become a hunter. Instead of $1 million, Ben would earn $5 million every season, but he'd have to kill players. His first task was to kill every hunter on the plane. Ben refused. Then Dan threatened to kill Kathy and Sheila. Ben was enraged. Dan gave the order, and the show broadcast the news of their deaths live. Amelia insisted it might be fake, so she turned on the broadcast. It showed Ben's location and announced that his family was murdered live and that the only way Ben could survive was by killing the hunters. Ben snapped. The hunters rushed at him. Ben fought back, killing them all and damaging the aircraft. Then Eric attacked him in a brutal fight and nearly killed him. Eventually, Ben opened Eric's parachute, causing it to get stuck in the aircraft window. He stabbed Eric and killed him. Ben told Amelia there was only one parachute left and insisted she take it. Amelia jumped. Ben went to the cockpit and spoke to Dan one last time. Dan offered him the hunter position again. Ben refused. He had watched his family die, and the public was now rooting for him. Ben went live and exposed the truth, that his family was murdered, that deep fakes were used to manipulate everything, and that the game destroyed poor people's lives. Dan instantly cut the broadcast and replaced it with a deep fake, saying that Ben planned to crash the plane into the studio building. He taunted Ben, asking if he really killed his family, then told him it didn't matter because he would die anyway. Dan remotely hijacked the plane and directed it toward the building. Ben was furious. Just before impact, a missile struck the aircraft, destroying it midair and saving the building. Soon after, Brad released a video analyzing the entire season, exposing every lie, every fake death, and every deep fake the game had used. The public turned against the show. Footage even suggested Ben might have survived. The escape pod was seen falling from the burning plane. 2 days later, Kathy and Sheila were shown shopping under new identities. The cashier mentioned that someone had taken Kathy's socks. Sheila went outside, and Ben was standing there alive. The next season was supposed to begin soon, but now the entire crowd supported Ben and wanted the show shut down. Bobby refused to host. Dan threatened him with a gun, but Bobby reminded him that his contract allowed him to walk away. He quit on the spot. Dan went on stage himself, but the audience revolted, storming the studio and tearing it apart. Dan tried to escape, but fell. Then Ben stepped in front of him and killed him.